Hey guys, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to cover all the objects and how they work. I'm going to jump right in. So let's start with object ball. The ball has to do several things. The first thing is when it's created, and we all know it's created in the middle of the room at some random location, but as soon as it's created, it needs to start flying either left or right with some speed. So there's an event for that. It's called a create event. This gets called. All the code that's in here will happen when the object is created or spawned into the room. And the code for this ball will be two things. We need to set its speed, so that tells it how fast to move through the game. And the other thing we need to set is the direction. Now when it comes to direction, it's a little bit more complicated to set because we want to keep this random. And really, it's not the speed that's going to make this game random, it's going to be the direction. So there's this really cool function in GameMaker called choose. It randomly chooses from several values. So the values we'll be choosing from will be some direction to the left and some direction to the right. Now I do need to give a quick lesson, so I'm just going to switch over to another screen here. Let's go whiteboard. Perfect. So in programming, in a lot of languages and game engines, this is how angles are treated or directions are treated. We've got your unit circle, and angles to the right start at 0. If you want to move upwards, then your angle should be 90 degrees. If you want to move to the left, then your angle should be 180 degrees. And if you're wanting to move downwards, your angle should be 270 degrees. And of course, anything in between that will place you somewhere in between these locations or angles. Now, so we want the ball to be flying off somewhere in this direction, or this direction, or this direction, or this direction. We do not want the ball to fly sideways. Actually, we do. It doesn't matter. It's fine. So the ball can be kind of like in this area. So any angle in between this range, and also any angle in between this range. Now the easy side, let's do the left-hand side first. That's kind of easy because we can go in between these two. I think that's 135. And for maximum, it would be something like 215. Okay, so let's do that one first. That's fairly easy to do. So we can choose. There's another function we have to do. So this is a function within a function, which is totally fine. Random range. So random range picks two numbers, a minimum and a maximum, and returns a value from between those two. So in this case, the minimum is going to be 135 and the maximum is going to be 215. Okay, so we've got one number to choose from so far, which is this. This will cover the left side of the ball. But for the right hand side or right direction, for the right direction, we have a bigger task because you can't go from 270, or actually this would be, I think I added 45 or 35. Sorry, this is actually incorrect. This one should be 225. I'll update that later. And this next one should be 315. And this one is 45. So those are my angles. Now, 45 to 315 is not a range. It's not a range because if you put that in the function, it would literally cover all the way around like this. And we don't want all those numbers. We only want the numbers shooting us to the right. So the way we fix that is we can pick a number from 0 to 45, or we can pick a number from 315 to 360. So this is 360, and that's 0. Okay, so we're going to be doing this in 2 steps instead of 1. All right, so once again, in random range, let's do the smaller numbers first. So we're going to go from 0 to 45. So that covers the upper section of the right. And then the other section is the bottom section. So we can do another random range. 315 to 360. Okay, so now the ball, when it spawns, it has a direction and it has a speed. And the direction is going to be either left or right at some angle between 45 degrees upwards or 45 degrees downwards. Okay, so that's the create event. Now what about when it hits the paddle? So this one's kind of an easier one. As I said, we're going to be using this thing called parenting. So when the ball hits the parent, so let's go collision, objects, and paddle parent. Once again, the reason I have this is because by doing this, the ball only has to have a collision event with the parent object, and all the other objects, the paddle 1, player 2, and CPU, will automatically do the same behavior. So all it has to do is it has to bounce, and there's, like for us, there's a function called move bounce all. This will make you bounce, it'll make the two objects bounce against each other. And advanced, so there's one parameter that goes in this function, which is to do precise collision checking or not. And I'm going to do true because I want precise collision checks. And I'll explain that in a second as well. And the other thing I want to do is, of course, play some audio. So I'm going to play audio, play sound, and the two sounds I have are bounce and point. So I'm going to play SND bounce. I want it to be playing all the time, so full priority, and false because I do not want it to loop. So once it plays once, it can stop playing itself. Okay, so that's the collision event with a paddle parent. The next one is, what about when it goes outside of a room? Okay, so no, let's do step first. So add event, step, and step. This event is for checking to see if the ball has left or touched the upper or bottom part of the level. So a fairly easy way to do that is to check its Y position. Or even better, I'll give a better example. B-box stop. So B-box stop, I'm going to explain it quickly here. Every sprite has what's called a collision mask. A collision mask is the space around it that is being used for collisions. A B-box stop, the variable, will tell you the position, current position of the top part of that collision box or bounding box. B-box left will tell you where this side is, B-box right tells you where this side is, and B-box bottom tells you where the bottom is. So up here when I type B-box stop, that's literally telling me where's the top of the ball at this current position. So I know if the top of the ball is currently at position 0 or smaller, that's what this means. That means I've gone past the top of the screen. So I need to do something, and that something is I need to take my V speed, which is my vertical speed, and I need to set it equal to my vertical speed times -1. So what that does, if I'm moving at a speed of 5 upwards, and then I get to this point, all of a sudden my speed turns into the opposite. Sorry, if I'm moving up, it would be -5, and then as soon as I hit the top, it would turn into +5, and I'd be moving downwards. So that's what this does. It reverses your vertical speed, and we only want to reverse vertical speed, not horizontal, because the bounce on the ceiling should keep you moving in the same horizontal position. But that's not the only time you want to reverse the speed. You also want to reverse it when you hit the bottom. So to hit the bottom, we do a very similar check. You can use the or word. So you go if this happens, or how do you hit the bottom? Well, you check to see if the bottom, which is B-box bottom, is greater than our room height. So room height tells the computer where the bottom of the room is, and then B-box bottom tells you where the bottom of the ball is. And if the bottom of the ball is lower down, once again the y-axis is flipped in GameMaker, then the room height, then you need to bounce, and that's where it bounces. Another thing I wanted to do to keep this game exciting, I don't want the ball to always be moving at a steady speed. I want it to sort of speed up over time. So the way you do that is simply type speed equals speed plus 0.003. So it's a very small value. I'm increasing it by a very, very small number, but I'm doing this every single step. So 60 times a second, I'm adding a little bit of speed to the ball. And over time, the speed will start showing up and the ball will start speeding up. So that's the step event. So we got the ball bouncing off the ceiling and the floor, and we've got it slowly increasing its speed. We just need one more event, which is our what happens if we've left the room. So the only scenario where the ball can leave the room, and it's in the, so add event, other, outside of room. So the only time the ball is actually able to leave the room with our current setup is if it's leaving on the left or right hand side. So what we can do now to know which side it left on is we can check to see what its position is, where its X position is. So we can go if the ball's X position is less than 0, that means it exited the room on the left hand side. That means that we need to set, this is a new concept here, this is called global variables, and we'll cover this in a later video. It's just saying that I want to take my player 1 score and increase it by 1. Plus plus. What plus plus does in coding is it increases the value that's currently in here by 1. So if this was 0 and you call this function, it would now become 2. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. So if X is greater than room width, not height, then we're going to increase the other player's score. So that's player 2 score by 1. Okay. And then finally, we're going to modify our game controller. So our game controller is the object that will be spawning the balls in. We talked about that earlier. So what I want to do is I want to take the game controller and take a value inside of it called countdown. We'll be creating this later on. And I want to set it to 90. 90 is 1.5 seconds. So in 1.5 seconds, the new ball is going to be created. And the other thing I wanted to do was destroy this ball. So this ball has left the playing field, either on the left or right hand side. So at this point, it should be getting destroyed. So once again, the ball checks to see if it's left the room on the left hand side, then you give a point to player 1. If it's left the room on the right hand side, then you give a point to player 2. And then you reset the timer in your game controller, and then you destroy the ball. So that is the code for the ball. It's one of the more complicated objects. So let's move on to the next one. So let's do the game controller, just because they are kind of related. So the object game controller doesn't have a lot of things it has to do. It does have to, however, when you first place it into, when it first gets created in the room, and the two rooms that will really use this object are the multiplayer room and the single player room. When it gets created, so we go add event, create, we need to make sure that we start this countdown timer. So we're going to go countdown equals 90, same thing as before. This just means you have 1.5 seconds before something happens. And then this thing that's going to happen is, for one, we have to make sure this countdown timer is running down. We have to check to see if it's a run out of time. And then we have to check to see if it's time to spawn a ball. So we go add event step. And in here we can go if countdown. So if our countdown number is greater than -1, then we want to decrease it by 1. So we go countdown minus. So once again, countdown starts at 90. Every single step, which happens 60 times a second, this object is going to check if its countdown value has reached a value of -1. And if it hasn't yet, then it decreases this value by 1. So it goes 90, 89, 88, 87, 86, and so on, all the way down to -1. The next thing it needs to do is we need to check if this countdown has reached 0. So if the countdown value is equal to 0, so when you do double equal sign, now you're doing a comparison, you're not setting a value, you're comparing a value. I'm comparing to see if my countdown has reached 0. If it's reached 0, then I'm going to instance create depth. You can use that one. We want to create the ball somewhere. So this function will create an instance of an object, which means it'll take an object from here and put it into the game. And we have to tell it where to spawn this. So we have x, y. So the x position, that's the horizontal position, should be in the middle of the room. So that's going to be room width, that's horizontal, divide by 2. That's the very center of the room. The y position, so this is one that can be random. So we're going to use the random range again. So random range. And this needs 2 variables, the top and the bottom. 0 is the very top. And let's not go to the very top. Let's leave a little bit of space. So let's go maybe 100, and then let's go room height. I can't type. Room height minus 100. So we're not going all the way to the edge. We're going 100 pixels down from the top and 100 pixels up from the bottom. For the Y position, depth is like how deep into the page you want to create this character. It's not really relevant in this game. Usually you can just put depth and they'll spawn this object on the same layer as the object that is spawning it. Once again, this doesn't really matter for a game like this. It's more about games where you have things overlapping each other. And then the object that we want to spawn is the object ball. Okay. And with that, the game controller is also done. I think I'm going to pause here, and I'll make another video that will cover the other objects in the game. Okay, so I'll see you guys in the next video.